This is episode 13 of Writer's Block. We're in a middle discussion that I want to put on air. Sam, what were you saying about MIBR and how you and Launders are completely correct and how they're not completely overrated before we start the show? True?
Well, I was just saying that we probably think that they're going to be like a top 6 team. So let's say that in the last year or last like 6 months, they've been like a borderline top 10 team.
But what were you saying about pro players thinking that because they practice?
I was saying, so a lot of pro players, if you ask them who's like a dark horse to win the major or something, they'll say like, oh, SK, or sorry, MIBR is a really good team, or MIBR will be really good soon. Like I know Glaive said, oh, MIBR coming up, they'll be a really good team soon. And I think part of it is because of the faith that they put in to players like
this is why we're starting the show at this awkward point, because I just have the best analogy you're ever going to hear right now, all right? So I've been watching some documentaries on the AIDS crisis in the early 1980s in the United States.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Oh, dude, this is fucking awesome.
Sure.
And you guys got to realize that this was a very dangerous time. This is a fatal disease. Everyone's dying, and they need the best information possible. These are people dying from AIDS, right? And in the early days, they didn't have a good medicine to combat AIDS. You know, people were dying very quickly. It was an epidemic. Yeah. It was huge, especially in New York and among the gay communities.
Of course.
If you watch movies like Dallas Buyers Club, a lot of the gay community thought false drugs like peptide T would actually help them out, when it was actually scientifically proven much later that that was not an effective drug. Gay communities in the 1980s with AIDS are pro players who think other teams are good. They have no idea. These people in the 1980s who are dying of AIDS can't find the right drugs. They're doing all the research. They're trying hard. They can't even figure it out. How are pro players supposed to figure out who's good based on a couple screens? That's my point. Okay, start of the show. We're going to talk about North this
No.
week.
Let's give that like its adequate pause for a bit. Just silence. Just let's give that a bit of space, eh? Just a bit of space. Holy shit!
My God, that was such an unreal way of saying.
Well, I mean, scientists knew AZT was the good drug. They just had to lower the dosage later on. So, like, analysts, we might know their way, but people actually in it, they're a little too close to the surface. They don't really know. They think some brain protein will help them out. It's not going to. But let's talk about the real main course of the show. Actually, one point of housekeeping before we start the show in proper. So during the same day we recorded the last episode, young Sam W. Down here in the bottom left corner was on a small show called Counterpoints. And the first 5 minutes of the show that I caught, I mean, I didn't watch after the first 5 minutes out of respectful protest. They decided to talk about how there's no other podcasts in Counter-Strike, how no one filled the void that they left when the Counterpoint stopped recording episodes. And Sam was just sitting there, once again in the bottom left-hand corner, not saying shit. Sam, you didn't even say the name of the show. You could have at least let the fans know who they were insulting.
And then cowered. I said we have a podcast, and then I cowered. And you know why? It's because those people are scary, and that's
who have both been on our show within the those are the most recent.
And you know what? I'm happy they were here. Both terrifying. So and Neil.
Hey, that's not nice. That's not nice. Moses was very nice to you.
Yeah, no, they're all nice to me. Like that's not an issue.
Okay.
It's just they're scary. They're scary and they're old.
No,
I
cower scared, man.
in my. Well, I mean, they're old. They're older than me.
Okay. Well, okay, so we're going to talk about the one true subject of this podcast, the only thing we really care about, the only thing Sam W. thinks about, as he said at the beginning of last episode, MSL and North, because suddenly they're good and they're actually relevant, and we can talk about them without just pandering to a very small audience of North apologists.
Yeah, it's like the classic thing, like a broken clock is right twice a day, just like, we just keep fucking talking about it. Eventually, they're just a good team.
I like that, yeah.
All right, so it's a hard place to start. Like, okay, so Max, you're sort of, maybe this is an unfair characterization, but I think probably your most successful, most popular at the very least piece of all time as a writer was your MSL piece where you called him the worst player in Counter-Strike. and
that.
someone who should be removed from North, and now he's winning an MVP, and
Are we just gonna
winning,
start an MVP?
and he's and he won a premier level event, beat Astralis in 2 best-of-3s, beat Navi in a best-of-3. I mean, how's your 3,000-word apology coming? Is basically why.
Dude, the Twitlonger's brewing. I'm telling you that much. That's.
I just really want MSL just to retweet your article right after you won the championship.
Just question mark like as
actually a lot of people went back to the tweet that you made where you tagged me and said we're starting an like young analyst against MSL, and like 15 people went back and liked that tweet in revolt. In revolt. It's stuck in their mind.
Well, see, I'm gonna take like this sort of mature approach and say like, hey, at the time, it because like that's what makes a story so fucking insane, and that's what makes North's run at Stock, because like he was, in my opinion, the worst player in the world at that time, or like at least the bottom 2, him or Edward, in terms of the professional players that you would characterize at the bottom of the pack, and like. I need some time and some space and maybe like an isolation tank and like some really powerful psychedelics to like think through just like what happened in Stockholm. You know, just the idea of like MSL becoming the primary AWPer of North, beating Astralis in like 2 consecutive best-of-3s, like, 2 best-of-3s, not back-to-back. It's just so ridiculous, especially given because I'm standing by that shit. Sam and Scott, I'm still thinking at that time MSL was the worst player in the world. Like you watch any of those GG.bet, like those qualifiers, because I went back over my notes and reading them, and yeah, dude, like I think he still was definitely. I stand by the piece.
I mean, that's not probably the best argument. It's like I was thinking at the time that he was really bad, and then I looked over my old notes, and I agree with myself from my own evidence that he is bad. I get your point. I mean,
yeah.
I have my own thoughts on MSL on this tournament.
Can I go one step further? I'm going to go one step further here. I'm going to say MSL is just as bad as he used to be. He is not a sliver better than he was before.
Okay, no, that's actually exactly what I want to get into, because I'm actually going crazy in the other direction, looking at Twitter and looking at the games and listening to the casts and stuff the other day during the tournament, because I don't think MSL is good with the op. I'll just throw it out there. I don't think, like, people are going, he's like a good opper now. Like, he found his niche. Like, I don't think he's good. Like, Sam, you're a resident op expert, op enthusiast at the very least. How would you characterize MSL's opping? And then I'll give my opinion without loading the question too heavily.
I've got an opinion about it as well.
I think that people sort of got hyped up in the storyline as the tournament went on, because if you listen to the early casts, they're like, wow, he's hitting some shots. He's making a lot of mistakes, but, you know, he's hitting some shots, which is definitely true. And MSL hit some shots, and he was definitely, in terms of his aim, he was perfectly functional. Let's say he was Cajun B-esque with his opping. He was perfectly fine and serviceable. He wasn't used to the op, though, so he made a ton of mistakes. He kept repeaking when he shouldn't have.
Exactly.
Yeah. True very well at all. And I mean, maybe that got better as the tournament went on. The thing that's weird is that some maps he would go plus 15, some maps he would go minus 10. And he had many maps where he went minus 10 and many maps where he went plus 15. I think that the entirety of North was really confident as the tournament went on, and he played that way. And he got punished sometimes, and sometimes he didn't, so he played really risky. And so I think he was fine, but like I think that his opping, like he's more useful as in this situation than he was previously. That doesn't mean that he's better. That just means he's putting himself in way more important positions. So obviously he's going to succeed more individually. Like he's investing more and more resources, both in terms of where he is on the map and the weapons he's buying. Like the most resources on this team are going towards MSL. So like he better be having a 1.06 rating over the whole tournament. He fucking better. Like it's not like he was nearly as good.
The harshest take of MSL of all time.
No,
he was good, and he fucking better be.
Yeah, but
else.
This is important. No. But what is important is that like MSL took a risk. No one on his team ops. Like it's so bad that when he dies, no one picks up the op. I've never seen a team like that. People said that they're like Liquid. They're not like Liquid. Everyone on Liquid ops. every one of them will op sometimes, or like Naf can op, Twist can op, Elish can op, Nitro can op. Like they're fine. Taco can op. Like everyone on that team can op. But like none of the North guys want to op. I'm sure some of them could if they wanted to, but they don't. And so he has to. And he's investing these resources, and he did fine. Like I don't think he was a massive handicap. And I think that if he keeps doing it, he'll get better at opping as time goes on. But like we have to put it in context. It's not like MSL suddenly went from a 0.85 player to a 1.09 player in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is happening for specific strategic reasons. And if he kept having a 0.85, that would mean he got considerably worse than he was prior, even though he's maintaining the same rating, because he's, you know, there's way more pressure on him to perform. And like fair play to him. Like I'm like MSL played perfectly fine.
Yep. Okay, Sam, you have your bed made, you have your house in order. Max, do you have a proper opinion on MSL's opping? Your bed's not in order, I've noticed.
No, there's some action going on back there. I thought, oh yeah, something I did comment about making. Anyway, that's all right. I thought, because I watched the Valencia VODs of North after they won Stockholm to try like figure out in a regressive fashion how they're.
Oh yeah, and you also wrote a pretty interesting article, I think, on. I'll mention that later, but yeah, go ahead.
And I noticed a lot of weird similarities between the way Mixwell AWPed and the way MSL AWPed in the sense, like especially around Inferno and like the re-peaking style and how confident they were. But obviously, like in Valencia, Mixwell is probably a better AWPer than MSL, I think it's fair to say, and against worse teams, so it seemed justified. The thing that threw me off was like just the completely unbased confidence MSL had in the way he just like re-peaked, you know? Just just the cognitive dissonance that's required to have like testicles of that size.
It's pretty baller though, that he's like, people call him the worst player of all time, or the worst player in Counter-Strike, and yet he has, and then he's like re-peaking simple. Like it's just
just down it up. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, it wasn't just with the op too. Like he was playing really close with smokes, and he almost felt like fucking snacks. Like he was like that entire team had a thing going. Like they were all very confident.
It was a Cinderella run, definitely. I mean, we sort of see them falling off now, but that's sort of discussion for later. But my thing with MSL was like, if I would have to rate them like on his opping, like maybe it's like pure technique, is like pure flicks or pure ability to hit shots. Like he can hit like when the stable shot, like the shot that's not so hard, but like maybe his actual technical ability is not that great, like pretty low for a primary offer. If you consider him a primary offer, his like decision making in the moment is pretty terrible. Like the Reese takes, like holding his angle, like versus ecos. Like I saw him like lose his op like several times to Astralis on Nuke that first time they played Astralis in the group stage. But like I actually think like his positioning, or like maybe positioning isn't the right word, like his global positioning, like setting himself to get kills early round setups and rotating with Kirby on overpass or something like this to find kills to surprise the other team, I think was very good. And like that he had that device like a quality to his play, and I was thinking that before even. What were you saying?
Because he like, as you were probably about to say. Sorry for interrupting you. He specifically studied device to try to figure out how to op, and so it makes sense that he was very, very mobile.
Just some anime level shit, eh? Just like
Well, I mean, dude, it worked, and not only did it work, but he played better than Device in the best of threes that they played against each other.
Oh, but can we squash the narrative that MSL out Device though? Like I watched that overpass game. He got one kill on Device, caught him in rotation. Device didn't op this whole T half.
Like it's not like he was like a better mechanical opper than Device. He played better than Device over those two best of threes though. Like Device really had a bad day on both those occasions, especially the first best of three. But on both occasions, he had some really bad maps and he had very little impact. And it felt like he was getting in his own head. In fact, that's probably one of the bigger reasons, other than weird like veto going on.
Definitely. With the not banning Nuke. I mean, everyone was on Twitter going apeshit. I came late to the party on that, but like, why not just play Nuke? Like, I've been saying that for months now, right? Just make Nuke their first pick every single best of three. But I won't get on my hobby horse quite yet.
Anyway, but yeah, all that to say, like like MSL should get credit for that. Like one of the
Yep.
biggest reasons he was successful is because he
Yeah.
was so mobile with the AWP, and that's
Well,
a
and I
really
think
good.
just to add on to that, like one of the biggest things with, especially against Astralis, because people will gloss over the fact they were on the brink of losing to Mouse in the semifinals. You know, like it could have been a 2-0, I think, very easily in the semifinals. And it's weird how the series against Mouse felt closer at a lot more points than it did against Astralis. And I think that can be pinned down pretty much largely to the way you like. I have this theory that I've been working on after watching the Na'Vi win over Astralis at Cologne, now watching the way North win against Astralis. I think if you just make the game really scrappy and you can match the Astralis man for man and sort of equalize out the advantages in terms of firepower and just make the game just this fucking slugfest of just random pushes and things like, and that's how Tai Lu took a map off of Astralis as well. Then I think that's where you see Astralis at their weakest. But then if you try to do the same thing against a team like Mouse, it's, you know, Mouse thrives in that shit. And that's where you see Mouse often like sort of be able to sort of win those scrappy exchanges more so than Astralis might be able to. And I think MSL's AWPing is really conducive to that sort of successful style against Astralis, that just retarded repeat style. Because it's that classic
Simple
thing.
like.
It's like, yeah, simple like, dude. The Denmark prodigy MSL.
Okay, I actually have one more question for you on the op, and then we can. I sort of want to go back to this point about Norse scrappiness in the early rounds and their aggressiveness on CT. But you were talking about Mixwell and sort of MSL adopting his style. I didn't go back. I didn't get a chance to go back and watch the Valencia games and compare it to MSL. Did you find that they were doing some interesting setups with the op? Like you saw in Inferno, they try and do that weird thing with like Valdi covering mid and MSL trying to alt mid, or like they Molotov mid and MSL like doing that sort of thing.
Mixwell was definitely like peaking. He was like definitely like getting aggressive around alt mid, but it was more so just it felt like the amount of success Mixwell was finding, MSL just realized how successful you can be with that style of warping. And then it just felt like MSL, that's not the way he wants to play the game per se with the AWP, but that's just the one that he knows is the most successful based on seeing how good Device is with it and also experiencing what it's like to play with that, with Mixwell on the team. So it just felt more so that MSL just knew what he had to do and then just was playing on like some form of stimulant probably to give him the confidence to play it, you know?
Okay. Well, my theory was, without going back and watching the Valencia games, that maybe like MSL actually taking up the op himself actually like led him to think of creative op setups. So you saw him on other maps try different things with the op. I think they were pretty creative with their op setups, doing like bait setups on Inferno, Inferno and overpass at different points of the map. I thought like with like him baiting in Kirby or using the op, or actually on Train 2 on the stairs to B, doing like an interesting setup with Valdi with like a bait setup like MSL forward and then using that op, like missing his op shot, then Valdi swinging in and getting a good spray down. Like I think watching MSL, like I'm like, is him actually taking up the op encouraging him to think about the op in new ways and in developing his like Rolodex of different cute ideas he can do with the op, or is it more of Max's idea? Sam, what do you think about this? Do you have an opinion either way on this?
I don't trust MSL and States, those fucking Deve VODs, man. That's my theory. I legitimately just think he copied. No, I think he just copied Device, or like he copied Device's style, and he was just like, okay, I'm not gonna be like Mertz, so I'm just gonna blunt force myself through a smoke or push way too hard. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch my position every round so they don't know where to use his utility, so I can get a free shot every time. And obviously that doesn't work always, but it worked a lot. It worked a lot on against Astralis. Like Astralis got caught many times trying to just sneak a way through and not expecting MSL to be there and not being able to trade effectively. Like around Inferno, he did a really good job of switching between Arch side and short side. It's called short side. I forget the name is
Yeah.
blank to me, but
And top banana as well, like anchoring
yeah.
V
So
all the time, yeah.
but like MSL or sorry, Astralis would often try to sneak through brackets while trying to peek arch side, because that's normally where the off plays. And boom, MSL was on the other side.
Yeah.
And or they had bait setups. You know, they just did a really good job of switching things around, revolving around MSL's op, and so he was often able to have a lot of space that you wouldn't expect someone would give, especially Astralis. But they just didn't know where he was going to be, and so they couldn't use all their utility.
Okay. But Max, to your point about North's scrappiness in early rounds and sort of their a more scrappy playstyle, you've always sort of been a fan of their CT setups. That's something that you've sort of called out on this show and in your article about North recently. That's just another thing that you highlighted about them that you thought was impressive. What do you see about their? Because I think they were pulling out some pretty unique things on stuff like Inferno and Overpass, and even Train a little bit with their CT setups. What did you see from them? Was there specific examples, or do you think there's a tendency, or was there something that changed maybe looking at the new roster with Nico, and maybe something you could talk about is sort of the role swaps that you talked about in your article?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that sort of obviously MSL All Pingers we've touched on has been the big storyline, but underneath it, I definitely thought like Valde's success was directly attributed to sort of Nico playing on sites with him a lot, and it definitely felt like Valde was forced to be in a lot more multi-kill positions, and he had a lot more resources allocated to him because Nico was often playing off of him in a lot of ways, or if Valde was baiting for Nico, he would just find the kills. And I'm especially thinking around Pit on Inferno, where they'd obviously go to like double Pit setups, and I can't remember the exact change of roles, and I think they played B site together on Overpass as well.
Right.
And
the way I was seeing it was, I felt like Nico was sort of getting these like spray down positions, and then where Valde was giving more like positions backside where he could sort of use his like intelligence and positioning and utility to sort of play off of Nico, but Nico would be sort of the front person. Did you find that? Like he play like barrels all the time on an overpass, and like Valde would play.
If it's as hard as fast and that, because on Pit, like I know they would like switch positions a fair bit, and like they would often change where they play. But like for example, if we're switching on the other side of the map on T side, like North, and I saw this in their Valencia VODs as well, they do this thing on the force rounds where they do that wall of smokes, where they like smoke off Pit and isolate Pit from A site on Inferno, and they will like jump out a balcony. And I saw them do it like 3 or 4 rounds, and it's always Valde who jumps out a balcony second, picks the guy, picks up his gun, and then we'll find like just a 4K in the round on the pistol.
He's also doing that with like the SMG sometimes, with like some weird jumping.
Cool.
Yeah. But
you go.
But I'm curious, Sam, what do you think about Nico? Because I sort of had mixed opinions. I thought people were praising him, but I think that was sort of a narrative thing where people like he's a new player and he's doing okay. I wasn't super impressed with him. My general opinion was he was sort of given some pretty good spots CT-wise, but he was actually thrown back in the rotation on T side. What do you think about Nico, or how would you define the roles, the new system on their T side?
On their T side?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really noticed what Nico does on their T side.
He's sort of been playing back in the pack, and it's sort of AZ.
I think he's kind of a write-off on their T side. He's
for sure.
that important of a player. On CT side, though, it's interesting because he's playing a lot of AZ spots, right, what AZ used to play, and like he's been pretty good. Like I don't know, his stats were very good. I don't know why, but in terms of actual situations where pressure was put on him, he had some really good game sense. He had some really good reads. Like against Astralis on Nuke, he had some really good rounds. And on Inferno as well, he had many multi kills. So I feel like he's good. He's good for that. I don't know, like what I'm a little biased. Like I like when players have a really good movement and really good crosshair placement, and I felt maybe he doesn't quite have that skill. So like that's why I have such a crush on Magisk and Pit. It's because he's just so mobile and he's so skilled that he can just peek for half a second and get a kill. Like Nico is like that too. Even though he doesn't play Pit, he easily could. And I don't think sorry, the other Nico. I don't think this Nico could quite do that. So like I don't think that. So on A side Inferno, I don't think he's the star there.
No.
But I think he's perfectly fine. Like he's a passive-ish player. I think that's forced Valde to play way more aggressively, to be way more assertive. And I just think that Valde plays better off of Nico than he does off AZ. Like at least he shines more. You know, AZ is much more of an aggressive player than Nico is. And so I feel like maybe Valde wasn't as confident in pushing because he knew that there's a good chance that AZ would die. And so he didn't want to peek too much. So, but I think the bigger story maybe is actually on the other side, where it's AZ playing better on the other side of the map.
Yeah, as like a rotator almost, right?
Yeah, like I think like especially on B side Inferno, he's been really, really good. Like AZ has always been a really good clutch player for whatever reason. And when he's forced into positions where he can't play aggressively because he's playing with Kirby, and Kirby's a really aggressive player, especially nowadays. And so he's the passive player on that site, and that used to be MSL. And so when Kirby would do some really aggressive play and die, the person that was left alone to hold that site was MSL, which, as we previously discussed, didn't go that well, like especially since his MSL's peers on that site are people like Nico on FaZe, so it's not great. But when you have AZ there, AZ actually shut down Astralis on many, many rounds just off.
AZ has sick tournament generally, but yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, he did. He had a pretty good tournament. Like people kind of overrated his tournament.
Well, he did had one like really sick series, and then in the aftermath of that, people go crazy.
No, but people acted as if like he played much better than he does normally. But like AZ's been a pretty good player for quite a few tournaments now. So it's not like he had, compared to his average, it's not like he had a nutty tournament. He just had a good tournament by his standards. But he, against Astralis, especially in that first best of three, he played really, really well. And I just think that when he's forced into those more passive situations, when he's not when you're the one playing back on site, unlike Pit, where you're normally you have the opportunity to be the first point of contact. If Valde's in the site and you're around Pit, you have a good chance of being the first point of contact. But when he's the second point of contact after Kirby, I think that he shines a lot more than he did previously in Pit.
As he should. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's a babe, so yeah.
Okay, so I mean, AZ's sort of a guy I think that is sort of under talked about actually. He's sort of just been a fairly average pro for a while now, ever since he sort of came back to the Danish scene from FaZe. But I think, I think we've said on this podcast a few times that he's actually looked pretty decent. My general thought for this tournament was like MSL went from like a bad level to like an average to good level. Valde is actually very good level. He's been at a pretty good level quite a few tournaments this year. So that's not a big surprise. But maybe AZ went from good to like sometimes pretty good. I was sort of wondering on the T side, how much of that, I think Max, you might have covered this in your article a little bit, about with MSL falling back with the op, that's sort of leading to the 1-2 punch of Kirby AZ instead of MSL Kirby or Kirby MSL, and that's sort
MSL rest of team. Like, there is actually like a punch now. It's not just someone dying in space. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think this was a part of the boost for him as a T-side player, or you think that it's more Sam's opinion that he's given sort of more space to move as a CT, or you think it's a combination of both? Or how would you rate AZ at this tournament?
I think Kyobi's a far better player on the T side than MSL was in terms of the
pure entry.
Instead of just like in terms of just a pure entry, I think he finds far more success, and he is also more versatile in a round as well. Like when they get map control, he doesn't feel need to just push it and overextend and die. Like I think Kyobi's very, very, and I've said this for a while, I think he's a very, very well-rounded player, and that he can find success at a lot of different points in the round, but his skill set is just so geared towards being an entry. That's just how everyone conceptualizes him. And so I really rate Kyobi as the primary entry fragger of North, and I think AZ has a lot of space to work with off of that, especially because AZ can play as Sam mentioned, those clutch scenarios with Valde a fair bit. So yeah, this
and they're
North,
both really good clutch players.
both really good clutch players, and yeah, so I definitely think it's more so just the weightiness of like Kirby's presence as a T-side entry that buys North far more space on T-side to work with. That even if MSL wants to do something just completely cooked on the T-side with the AWP, it can still end up well for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. You have a point, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to. I feel like I don't think North played like on an individual level. I don't think they played that much higher than they normally do. I just feel like
I think they there's a sort of
no. I think
you have to give them credit for being sort of in a sort of a zone and performing better than average. Certainly better than what they're doing right now at the major.
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest reason I think that they overperformed or that they won is because they, like, right out the gate they started playing like very, very aggressively on CT side.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they got of their first kills on CT side, they got 65% of it, which is like better than Astralis, which is fucking insane. And the reason is because they were doing crazy shit, like they were doing double pushes through apps into second mid against Tyloo and like.
But
what the
Sam,
fuck?
what you have to realize is they've been doing that shit for a long time. Except it was this tournament that it actually started working.
So they've done stuff like that. Like I know Valde really likes to push apartments, but it felt like they really decided like fuck it, we don't have strats. Let's just do this on CT side.
And there's layers to that because first of all, it's like the first like event after the break for most teams. So it's, it's a classic thing of they're just like, oh, all right, guys, just same shit as usual, and then North just like fucking straight up.
And but so it was everywhere. Like AZ and Valde were playing more aggressively. Like Kirby was playing really aggressively on the Inferno. Like for better or for worse, he was like fucking going ham. And so one interesting thing that came up twice since they've won. The first one is Glaive said that like people are going to watch their VODs and they're going to get counted really quickly.
Yeah. And
then after their win, Spirit, one of the players on Spirit said, yeah, we just watch their VODs and they have too many tells, basically. Like once you know what they're doing, once you see which nades are coming in, you know what they're doing. And like in MSL's own interview, he's like, "Oh yeah, people are gonna watch your VODs, but we can just use fake tells and things like that." which you know what? Like MSL was actually
like you.
MSL was really good at that on Inferno. Or sorry, not on Inferno, on Cobblestone. It was one of his, or he was really good at mixing up things so that you wouldn't have really classic tells and you couldn't counter his executes. But on Nuke, they already have a really bad T side on Nuke, but against Spirit, it was like every time that they were trying to go into tunnels or any time they were trying to do anything around the A site, they would just spray through Squeaky and kill 3 people. And like, so that it was really, I think they kind of got lightning in a bottle in the sense that they felt really good. They were doing something really aggressive and it was working. And then sort of a YOLO style, if you will, which is very like atypical for the players on that squad, because they were making a lot of individual plays. And after that, they kept trying to do the same things at the major, and people were like, "Oh, that's what they're doing now." Okay, noted. And then now they're getting shot.
I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent. I actually saw a comment by someone, I forget, who was saying to me that they actually think that North is just less prepared for this tournament. And I actually was watching an Elma Putty video before we started recording, before we joined the call. And he actually made a good point with the Astralis second half on Overpass for the Game 3 of the finals. Like, North did a very YOLO play towards A in like a very early round of their T half. And that sort of pushed Device back from bathrooms for the remainder of the half, thinking they were going to try aggressive play from like A long. And I don't know if necessarily North was YOLO, but I thought I saw the aggression. Like, some of it looked kind of dumb, like MSL pushing and re-peaking with Yop. But on some level, I thought it was pretty calculated. Like, you see MSL versus Mouse Sports get pushed back by flashbangs with Yop, then wrecked as they execute on the site. And then the next site, they do like a triple banana setup with MSL and the op. It's sort of they try to push MSL with the op back, and they run into like a crossfire on banana. I thought like they actually had like a lot of thought to their aggression, and I thought like maybe with this new tournament it's hard to find all these ideas again. Maybe they just didn't have all these prepared little tricks and to go into this tournament. And it also helps that other people have. I mean, it hurts that other people have anti-stratted them.
I think so. I meant more the YOLO individual plays were on CT side.
Okay.
But or the like the puggy-ish plays, like they were not completely individual plays, but they were pretty puggy. I do think they did a lot of YOLO rushes on T side, but I actually think that MSL called really well during that tournament. But I think the MSL called really well during that tournament. So yeah, for sure. I just think that when you're doing like the same executes because you haven't had time to prepare, and people can tell, oh, this is what they're doing now. Oh, they're all going outside. Okay, noted. And then they just completely shit on you. That's going to become a problem. But like that kind of stuff, like I think that it makes sense that they're losing to teams like Spirit right now. Like they probably shouldn't, but it makes sense that they're losing to those teams. Like I can see a reason. I don't think that it's just like, oh, North is like a really inconsistent team and things like that. Like I just think that they came into the last event without much preparation, and with the little preparation they had and their energy carried them to many impressive wins. And now against teams that they know less well, it's just like, oh, this is what you're doing, okay, and then you get countered. Like I think it makes sense that they're losing.
All right, let's jump in on this because I can't make heads or tails if I agree with Mac or not. Sam or not.
See, like my big thing is I think North. Nothing that I saw in their Stockholm run was inconsistent with the way I conceptualize their game. Like there wasn't anything they did where I'm like, oh, that's such a non-North way of playing this round. Outside of the like sort of shifting of roles and the way certain different players were weighted within a round, that was the thing that I noticed the most. But in terms of these fast pushes, their CT aggression, I think that's just all that was already within North's game, but it was just massively amplified by the fact that, first of all, they were finding success with it, with their individuals being put in different positions and being able to actually like win duels in those like bouts of aggression, which made them want to do that more and more and more. And I think it's just this sort of exponential thing where you just build momentum throughout a tournament, just finding success with the same thing. And it's not like as a team, if you're Mouse, Navi, or Astralis, you can just pivot on a dime and suddenly realize what's happening. I think you're just sort of victims to this like wind of North momentum. And I think it's also hilarious that they're just going to get bombed the fuck out of the major now because everyone realizes what they're going to do. It'd almost be better if they got knocked out of the groups at Stockholm and then just went a fuck it style at the FACEIT Major and just like made legend status or some shit. Like that would
the thing is, it almost reminds you of Cloud9 or a Gambit, the last two majors, right? Where they have sort of a Cinderella run, sort of using a very specific style.
I mean, it kind of reminds you of Epicenter, where they sucked for a long time after that. So, everyone brings back. Like, I do think that some of their individual plays were pretty distinctive. Like, they found something like, oh, this is working. Let me just do this always. And it makes sense that, like, one of the most egregious things is, like, when MSL didn't have the op on Inferno and someone would smoke, like, bracket, he would always stand right outside the smoke. So if someone tried to sneak through the smoke, they would bump into him and he would shoot them in the head. The thing is, if you know that he's there and you know, oh, MSL he doesn't have an op. Okay, he's definitely going to be in front of the smoke. You can just flash him and he would just fucking die. So like, it's one of those things where, or like apps pushes, like as soon as Astralis caught on to those apps pushes, they immediately traded those kills. So I don't think, like, I think that they kind of got wind of things that were working for them and they kind of rode them. But
for sure.
Yeah, but I don't think that it's inconceivable that they come back and, you know, become a slightly better team than they were before. So,
what's your legitimate what's a reasonable, maybe not legitimate, what's a reasonable opinion for North going forward? I think before this tournament, before they picked up Nico, I'm like top 12 team. That's a good spot for North. Maybe top 15 team and catch me on a bad day. I'm feeling pretty depressed about North and MSL. I read that Max piece again. Really, let my eyes water
every
up.
time they like win a best of 3. Just like have a quick read of it.
Yeah,
Right, so they're ranked.
I felt
They're
like
ranked. They're ranked
top
4th right now.
that's a little ridiculous.
That's just
So
ridiculous.
Okay, so
Maybe
so
like
the
I would
10th
go
best
just to
team-
finish my point. I would go from like 12th to maybe like top 10. Like maybe they're a better team now. I don't have like great expectations, but maybe I think they didn't improve a lot in my mind of what they should do at future tournaments based on what I saw. Are you sort of in the same boat, just like a little bit better, but maybe not much better?
I think they'll be more than just a top 10 team. Like I think that they're going to be, let's say, as good as NRG. How about that? So like 8th to 10th, like worse than MIBR, probably worse than FaZe, worse than Mouse Sports, but better than Fnatic, better than Tyloo, better than Optic, better than Nance.
But all those teams that you just mentioned will probably end up beating them. And then it's just like a standard North affair. Like it's just back to normal,
Yeah,
So-
but I think that you'll see them make like, let's say, a couple like semifinals. How about that? Like they haven't made semifinals very much recently, but I think I could see them taking a series off someone like Liquid or someone like NRG. Like I think that's within the realm more so than it was before, simply because their rifle core is stronger now. And so I trust them a little bit more in terms of firepower.
Yeah, it's stronger because you took MSL out of it. But Max,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah, basically, I mean, you didn't add some sick rifle, right? But Max, you feel like you're sort of nodding your head on that sort of then yes, top 10-ish team, maybe a little better than that. Is that a fair expectation for North?
Yeah, man. I don't know. I feel like in terms of where they sit, it won't matter because it'll just be this oscillation between like they'll win a couple of best of 3s using this bullshit like variations of this style, and they'll be relatively inconsistent. They'll get a lot of HLTV points, so they'll like go up a bit, but then they'll just end up getting upset a bunch, and teams will rise above them. And so I think they'll just be sort of victims to this ebb and flow of like tier 2 teams, and except they'll be near the top end of that.
I think this is an important distinction though, because North has really struggled to take best of 3s off of top 10 teams, and so if they lose slightly more to teams that are worse than them, so by the end of the previous roster, they weren't losing a ton. So like they weren't losing to Hellraisers anymore. So I think they could probably lose to Hellraisers now. But I also think that they could beat. They're way more likely to beat Fnatic than they were before. Or they're way more likely to beat NRG than they were before. Which, I mean, it might end up being this more of the same. Like the more it's different, the more it's the same, and they'll end up overall doing the same. But I think at this point, North have been mediocre for so long. I would rather they make finals and semifinals half the time and then bomb out the other half. Just because, like,
spoken like a masochist. Get
No,
my
but,
hopes
like, I
up,
mean-
then crush them. Get my hopes up, then crush them.
For so long, North have had like no ceiling. So I would rather increase increase the height of the ceiling and lower the floor at this point. Like I think that's a good strategy for North, instead of just being like, oh, we're just going to be mediocre forever. Optic, please disband.
Yeah.
Like I don't think.
I mean, that's another topic we go into, Optic.
We
but,
can get into that. Yeah.
But okay, here, maybe this is a weird theory, but I was thinking about this today. Where there's a weird thing with the major cycle, where basically the way teams work generally is some people will stick it out, but most teams will just roster swap after each major because there's always sort of a break, or because just the way that the tournaments are, with the roster lock and that sort of thing, they keep a roster, and then once the major's over, then they can kick a player and sort of fiddle around with it. And there's these long periods, say 6 to 7 months of teams sticking together, and they break up afterwards. It seems like there's this weird sort of thing where a team rises up and is really good during the main thrust of the season, and then by the major they fall off. So you see Astralis becoming the best team in the world easily, and maybe one of the most, probably, I think it's fair to say, the most dominant team we've had in Counter-Strike going back to SK 2016. But now it seems like they might be falling off a little bit. I mean, losing 1 or 2 group stage, well, losing to North is maybe sort of a bad sign, then losing a group stage game isn't the best sign, or a Swiss game. But
like it seems like there's this thing with teams where it doesn't seem like, well, like teams that are peaking now, it's not good for them. Like Gambit peaking at the end of and their run together and winning the major, and then they, immediately break up after the major. Astralis sort of is missing the boat. They might not win this major, or I think they're still the favorite. But like North peaking now almost seems the worst thing because, okay, I don't know if Nico's going to survive in the roster. I think we all agree that he's maybe not the sickest addition, and they could get something better, especially with this Optic team shitting the bed every time we look at the screen, right? I mean, is it too early to talk about roster swaps? I mean, it seems like inevitable that there's going to be a lot of breakups in the post major era, and like what should they be looking for? Is it fair
Get
to
the Ollie, bro? The ultimate timeline you guys aren't even considering.
I don't think they should make a change. Like the only change that I could see that would
How
make
is
sense
Yugi
would-
not begging to be on this team though? MSL's
Yeah, but-
winning premier tournaments with the op. How is Yugi not just staring that and
Okay,
just like
two things.
hitting himself on the head
Two
for not
things.
joining North?
Oh, dude, this is where Sam just like starts sweating.
No, two
Why
things.
like his life plans for Yugi? He like pulls
Yeah,
out
one.
his dream home for his.
The first thing is that if you kick Nico, which is probably the worst rifler on that team, so if you kick Nico and you add Yugi, that's a man-for-man improvement. But then you also have MSL back on the rifle, so that's already a problem. Second, Yugi has been beyond mediocre on this Optic roster. Like, I'm sorry, like I know I'm supposed to be the Yugi fanboy, but like he has not been an excellent player on this team. So I don't feel comfortable making that much of a sacrifice on a roster that's working fine to add an opper who knows the fuck is going on. The only player on that team that I would accept to make like a safe move would be Cajun for Nico, because that's the only because he can add a double op element that they're severely lacking. And second, like he's also just a pretty good rifler. So,
dude, how damaging would that be for Cajun B's ego to like go back to North? Like, holy shit.
Like
that's getting with the ex-girlfriend and that like
it is,
on a Tuesday. Like, not good.
Okay, here's my theory on Optic though. I think Optic are a bunch of skill vampires. They killed Hiko's career pretty much. I mean, he's barely limping back to this major. I mean, you see Yugi not performing well. Config's a shadow for himself. Ever since Stanislaw, that's like the curse of the Bambino. This team's just cursed, right? This Optic organization.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think that I don't know why, but there's something, even when this Optic team signed, I'm like, okay, this team looks fine. Like, this is a good team, but I feel so uncomfortable about the fact that they're with Optic because every roster since they won E-League has been terrible. And so
I don't know if it's management or if it's just like a force, but sort of just forced, like it's a money thing for them. Like they're paying them so much they don't care, and it's like in America or something. But it seems weird. Like there's all this weird tension in these teams, and like this Optic roster, sort of shitting the bed is very, very strange. Do you ever?
I know there's something definitely like supernatural going on. There's definitely something mystical. There's some aura. There's probably a supernatural being involved for sure.
No, but the weird thing about Optic is that they even did the good thing. They hired Rugga. A lot of those players have played with Rugga. They respect him. They're friends with him. They were happy when he got signed. He knows how to manage config. He knows how maybe. And Cajun B, at least he's worked with them for a very, very long time. And so I don't see a reason why they would be this bad.
Doesn't make sense.
I think it'd be totally understandable if they were just a top 15 team and okay, they're as good as, Big or something I don't know, Tyloo or G2. Okay, I get that they're not that sick, but they're really not doing well. And that's just, maybe it's just the wrong combination of players. Maybe I don't, but then the thing is Config just did an interview where he's we're definitely not kicking Gade. And so if you're not kicking Gade, then who are you kicking? And who are you signing? The only who is a good who could you replace at that point? Maybe you can kick Yugi for Natosafix, but that's
don't think about who you can kick from Optic. Who do you think? You gotta think about it. Who does North want from Optic? Because there's no way. North is a very attractive destination at this moment, and it's roster swap season. Max, who would you, if you're North, if you're MSL, I know this is a dream come true, and you have to sort of calm yourself down. I'm MSL. This is very, very exciting for you.
Yeah.
But if you're MSL, who are you looking at
Starting to bald already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know he's
So I'm
23, right?
So if I'm MSL,
too much brain power.
No, but like him and Glaive are like, I was looking at Hunden's age, and I thought MSL was about the same age as Hunden. But like Glaive and MSL are way younger. Like they're prospects, man. Like in hockey, they'd be prospects.
Wait, hold on. I'm MSL. I need to save North, so I kill myself and get like.
You're the MVP, Max. Don't say that. You have so much to live for.
This is the problem. Okay, this is the biggest problem with Optic, is that for a long time, it looked like Snappy would be like an alternative, maybe that will work better. Like, and like even like people like to say I like Snappy, but like I never thought that, like I never knew whether or not I don't know how to gauge in-game leaders really. So I didn't know if Heroic was a really good team or not, or well managed. It seemed like they were fine. It seemed like they had a really low ceiling though. So, but like now that he's leading a roster that's massively underperforming, even if Snappy's a great in-game leader, you cannot sign him until that team does better, until he goes to another team and does better.
I think it's very convenient that all of a sudden you guys are saying, oh, you know, he's hard to rate Snappy. I mean, this is just Sam saying this. Well, you're calling MSL the worst player in the world a few months ago. Okay.
As a player, I never insulted MSL as an in-game leader.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, dude, if you're on this show,
as far as I can tell.
By implication.
By implication, agreeing
like,
with everything Max says.
I think MSL looks like an above average in-game leader, but there's no way to tell how good an in-game leader is.
I think I actually finished my article on Zeus. I wrote an article. I finally got one done. It's been a long time. But my thing with coaches and in-game leaders is I think you have to assume good faith. You have to assume what you're seeing in game tactically is something that they created. And okay, you sort of have to read the news. Like, okay, if players are saying that this guy's not important, you can listen to them. But I think you have to assume good faith. And I think when you look at the game, it seems like I'd have to watch Optic to give a good opinion on Snappy and maybe read some more interviews. But it's definitely not a good sign for Snappy. I mean, it looks pretty bad, right? That this guy can't make this team work. He has all these tools, right? So even assuming good faith, I don't think in that he's a good game leader and he's trying his best and everything else. I think that definitely he's a bad replacement for MSL at the moment. But going back to my original question.
You can't sign him.
Yeah, definitely can't. But going back to my original question, Max, did you get a chance to get a chance to ponder on which player you would try to pick from North, or Sam? Do you have an answer from Optic? I mean,
yeah, KGB makes more sense to me.
Okay,
makes
Sam,
more sense.
Yeah,
more sense.
And then you keep MSL as the primary op with KGB.
Nah, you can like alternate them, I think.
Yeah, well, you can do it like a double op. It's fine. Like,
just two bad oppers instead of one.
Yeah.
Well, no, two very mediocre oppers instead of one.
Right.
Because the alternative is MSL rifling, and that's suboptimal. So, like, but I don't even know if I would go like another option would be you could replace a Kirby with config. That would be a really easy 1-for-1. I feel like that will work fine, but it doesn't make sense because they kicked him for personality reasons. So I don't, unless he fixed his attitude. I don't think that there would be any reason for him. Like, it would have to take a while for those wounds to heal, I think. I think it would make more sense if North were looking at Fraxters to find someone. Maybe that would make more sense to me than trying to find the Optic guys. Because the Optic guys are either people that are kicked or people that don't look good right now. So why not try to look at Staven or Refresh? You know what I mean? Especially, like, Staven's the young one. Like, he's the sexy one who everyone's, salivating over. But actually, I think Hundem called them a young Glaive, so that's pretty good. Yeah, that is a big compliment. So I think one of those players would probably be a better bet, just because like it doesn't make sense politically to add those guys, and they're not like a natural fit. Yeah, like except the only person who's like no, actually not even no one's a good fit on that team because they need an in-game leader who's a better rifler, and they need an opper. So unless you can find unless they get Fallen, I have one, Cadian for MSL.
I think I have to watch. I haven't even watched game. Okay, I'll say this. I'll just fire from the hip. Okay, Cadian is not gonna. I don't think that gets us a good idea. Cadian, what has Cadian done in the last 3 years? He what is he famous for? Standing in for Charles once at a major. I don't see I'm not buying. I'm not buying fragsters to North. I'm not any of these fragsters. I don't have to even watch these guys if they're not doing anything.
So the fragsters, Refresh and Stalvin are really good players. The problem is that one of them is 16, so that's a downside. But the thing with Cadian's actually he's running a pretty good team. Rogue are pretty good. They're nothing to scoff at, and he's just picked up the in-game leader role on. And he's playing well. He top fragged against Astralis. He's not. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but he doesn't need to be. This team, I don't know how good he is an in-game leader, but I'm sure he's serviceable, and he's definitely more than serviceable as an opper. Definitely, almost certainly better than MSL. So I'm just saying that's it in terms of just the style of the players, ignoring politics and all that. That's the move that makes by far the most sense.
All right, I'm going to scoff. Sam says I cannot scoff, but I will scoff. I think this idea is ludicrous. MSL's an MVP. We all know that. Max, have you looked at Rogue at all? Is there any validity to the idea of replacing a newly crowned champion with
I've been watching Tyloo and Na'Vi.
Tyloo's a team I got to figure out. That team is a sort of a brain fuck, right?
Dude, don't
bother.
Don't even bother, man. That shit's you got to be on some shit to appreciate Tyloo. That's all I'm saying.
Whenever I see someone on Twitter talking about Tyloo, it's always someone I've been really trying hard to figure out Tyloo, and I have a theory, and it's a full article, and then none of the theories ever connect with each other. I don't think anyone has a good idea.
Well, Hey, in saying that, my theory is going to be published on HTC Esports in the coming days, boys. So get ready for that. I don't know, man. I think the only thing I can say about Rogue is that I don't know anything about them.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I can say the team's done nothing.
Australian. There you go.
This team's done nothing. I'm not buying Cadian over MSL on North. That's ridiculous.
That makes sense, man. Dude, after this episode, I'm tweeting it out because that's such a good idea.
I can't wait till all the people with 100K followers just come rain down on you. Their tweets will block out the sun. Okay, any final comments for this episode? No.
I'm just so glad that it's it's DreamHack Stockholm finishes with North winning, and then it's the entire podcast is just about THC. That's just the best shit. So fitting.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I have a closing statement, and I think we should close on a statement. This is from the pre-show talk, so no one will understand the context, but I'm still going to say it. I think Steele's a top 20 player in the world.
Okay. Someone has to actually win some games before I have to before I care about them and watch them and can give opinion. But Cadian and Steele are not going to replace MSL in my heart. He's the best. End of podcast.